Okay, so things are starting to get a little bit interesting and exciting now. We're going to move on to texturing. Now, in order to create textures, we need to use another tool within Maya, which is called the Hypershade. And we need to open that up. So, the Hypershade's been revamped a little bit. So if you are an older Maya user, it'll look a little bit different. It freaked me out when I first used it, but I feel I'm alright with it now. Now, there are two ways of opening this up, obviously. So you can click on this little chappy here, which is just the quick way of getting to it. Or you can click on Windows and Rendering Editors, and Hypershade is in there. So I'm going to open that up, and hopefully, because I've reset the defaults in Maya, it should just show me a default Hypershade, which it has. So I'm just going to maximize this. And as with anything in Maya, it's a good idea to get it set up so that it's how you want it to be before you start working in it. And what I want is a little viewport so I can actually see my scene within the Hypershade, because it's a bit of a pain in the bottom if you can't see what you're actually texturing. So in order to do that, you can click on Window, and I would like to open up a viewport. And you can see it opens up a very, very small viewport. But as you can see, that viewport actually shows you your scene. Aces. What you can also do with that is you can drop it into your UI somewhere. You can see as I'm moving it around, it's saying, oh, you can stick it here. No, put it here. Yeah, which is really good. And I like it to be here. So I'm just going to click and drag, and then I'm going to release when it's going to go there, which is lovely. And then I'm just going to drag some of the windows around a touch, just to make that viewport a little bit bigger and manageable. Okay, and then just whilst your mouse is in that window, press 5 to turn on hardware shading, and now you've got a good idea of what you're applying your textures to. Okay, so this is your Hypershade. You can see that we've got the viewport in there. There's a material viewer here, and what this is it's a shape that previews what material is going to look like when you apply it. So it starts with this weird shader ball thing, which is actually quite good because it shows you lots of different surfaces on one shape. But you could also look what it's going to look like on cloth. You can look what it's going to look like on a teapot, if you're into teapots. You might also look what it looks like if it was on a water type splash. But I'm always quite happy with the shader ball. You've got the property editor here, which once you've created a new material, that's where you change the appearance of it. This is your workspace. So this is where all the sort of advanced linking of materials happens. This is kind of, we'll just use this tab at the moment, which shows all your completed materials. And this is the create area where you create new materials. So we are going to create a material, and the first material that we are going to make is for the projector. So I'm going to have a look in my create panel. I'm going to go to surface. And what I would like is a new blin. And what a blin is it contains properties such as shine. Well, it'll let you make it shiny, reflective, etc. The kind of opposite to that is a Lambert. We have a Lambert 1 assigned to everything already. And that is like a matte texture. So if you think of a painted wall, that would be like Lambert 1. One thing to keep in mind as well is never ever edit Lambert 1, because if I was to make this green, everything in the scene would now go green, because that is the default texture that is already applied. So you should try and leave that alone if you can. So I'm going to create a new blin, like so. And what I'm going to do with this blin is I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it Projector M. And the reason I put the M on is just so that I know that that represents a material, like that. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to change the colour of this material. So in my property editor, you can see that there's colour here. Now there's the slider, so I could just make it either black or white, or I can click on the actual colour rectangle here, which I'm told is called a swatch, and I can choose a colour. Now I quite like a really deep blue. I think that looks quite nice. Yeah, so I'm going to choose that kind of colour. And again, you can preview what that looks like on different materials just to get an idea of how that's going to come out. But I'll keep it on the shader ball. The next thing I'm going to do is change how this reacts to light. What I want this to look like when it's assigned is kind of a glossy plastic look that Apple seemed to favour in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I'm going to try and replicate that as sort of really shiny plastic. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the specular colour. I'm going to make that a much lighter grey. and that should make, if you can only just really see it changing, but it makes the highlights a little bit brighter. So I'm going to go quite towards the right hand side on that. I'm also going to change the eccentricity to 0.1, and you should notice when you press enter that the highlights, where it looks like the light's being reflected, gets a lot more focused. There you go. So it's now a lot more sort of shiny looking. It looks more polished. I'm also going to change the specular roll-off to 0.85, and that'll just make those highlights become a little bit stronger when I press enter. There we go. And the last thing I'm going to do is change the reflectivity to 0.3. Now you won't actually see an effect of this in your material preview, but when we start rendering later, it will just mean that this will reflect objects off it, but the reflections won't be too strong because we don't want it to look like a mirror. So I'm just going to change that to 0.3. Okay, now that that material is complete, we're going to assign it to the projector geometry. Now, of course, there are multiple ways of doing this, but the first way we're going to do is just by dragging it on. So here you can see there is our projector material, and here is our projector. So in order to assign that material to it, I'm going to, using my middle mouse button, click on the projector, and then I'm going to drag over the projector here, and I'm going to release. And then you will see that that material is now assigned, and if we move around, we can see how that works, where all those sort of reflections of the light are going to go. So yeah, really nice. I'm happy with that.